Perfect. Well, let's get into it. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. My name is Viv Ramakrishnan. I am the co-founder and CEO of Project Read AI, and I'm really excited to have you here today with us on the webinar. I could not be more thrilled to be joined by the folks I have here on this call with us. We have AJ Stick from Dayton, Ohio, Don Vollmer from Belleville, Illinois, and Grace Hayes from Baltimore, Maryland. They are the stars of the show today. Before we turn it over to them, I'm going to just walk us through a pretty simple agenda, and I'll try to make my time at the beginning short here. So I'm going to share my screen and I'll have a short presentation for you, and then it'll be time for our panelists. To share screen. And thank you all in advance for bearing with me on any technical glitches. This is my first time doing a Zoom webinar, and even though the Zoom experiment's been going for a long time, I still feel as inept as I did 4 years ago, 5 years ago, and appreciate any and all patience you have through technical glitches. So, as I mentioned today, we have a pretty straightforward agenda. I'm going to talk a little bit about who we are and what we've built so far here at Project Read AI. Then I'm going to describe the AI Tutor, which many of you may be familiar with to some degree, many of you may not. But we're going to talk about what it is, the vision behind it, and then the underpinning research that we've used to start to design it. You're going to hear from 3 educators then who are using the AI Tutor with their students or in their schools. We're going to have some additional Q&A with your panelists. Feel free at that point to also submit questions in the chat function, and hopefully those will hit me if I've set this up right. And finally, we'll close out with next steps. So with that, let's jump into it. So again, I'm Viv Ramakrishnan. I am the co-founder and CEO of Project Read AI. I'm a former teacher. I'm a former school leader. And for me, education has been a passion since I was in high school myself. And we really seek to build cutting edge tools that take the latest advances in AI and root them in evidence-based practices around how to actually teach literacy. And we're hoping to make what we do easier for teachers to implement the science of reading by building personalized, relevant content for their students. We're also really committed to ensuring that everything we're doing is effective and accessible. To that end, we have literally kept the tutor completely free now for the last 2 years as we've been building it, and always hope to make sure that access is not a barrier for folks. And all of this is with one simple North Star: ensuring that every single child becomes a successful skilled reader. If you're on this call, I have no doubt that you share in that mission. And that's why we're here. And I hope that everything we do ultimately serves that end goal. So, as I mentioned, everything that we are doing is rooted in Scarborough's reading rope. It is a simple model for how skilled readers are developed, and it's the confluence of 2 sets of strands: strands related to language comprehension and strands related to word recognition. That being said, most of what we've done so far, as you'll see, relates to strands that are around word recognition. So we have several tools, including our AI tutor, which we're talking about today, which supports decoding and fluency. We have our word mapper as a tool for teachers. We have our comprehension question generator, which gets into comprehension a little bit, but the vast majority of what we have built to date really centers around the word recognition strands of the rope. So many of you may be familiar with our decodable generator. This is a very viral tool that folks have really enjoyed using and sharing and building decodable stories that, one, are actually decodable, but two, align to their chosen scope and sequence ideally, and three, can be customized to support the name's interests, cross-curricular connections to other content areas that are happening in your classroom. So that's the tool that many folks are familiar with, and we hope that you continue to use as well. Though today our focus will be a couple more teacher tools: our fluency passage generator, our decodable games generator. We've released more in the last couple months. We will continue to release more. But again, today's focus is really around the AI tutor. So 2 buckets of tools: our teacher tools, our student-facing AI tutor, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So the AI tutor, what it is, the vision and research behind it, is really what I hope to cover here before turning things over to our panelists. I'm not sure if you all saw this recently from the New York Times. I'm sure most of you have seen the NAEP data that's coming out. And it's not particularly, oops, I might have lost the, is my share still visible? Are we in the slideshow? Okay, here we go. Okay, cool. I think I got it. So I'm sure most of you are familiar with the NAEP data that came out recently. It was not good. That being said, I saw something that really caught my attention beyond the, oh, we're not in a good place, the other day. This is from the New York Times, and it shows that not only are our lowest scoring students not doing well, they are the ones that are losing the most ground. And that was not always the case. So that's a little wrinkle to add. All of which is to say that the data that we see right now in this country, both around math and reading, but particularly reading, paints a pretty uninspiring picture right now. And I know all of us on this call really are thinking about what we can do to move the needle, and that's certainly what is the guiding, uh, inspiration behind our AI tutor. So we really have tried to design this based on an existing body of foundational skills research. So we know a lot of things that do work for emerging readers, and in fact, in many cases are necessary, including systematic explicit phonics instruction, repeated text or repeated practice of connected text, and a lot of it. There's not really a shortcut to the reps that so many students need to master concepts. Differentiation based on individual students, reading out loud being preferential to silent reading for emerging readers. There's, on one hand, not great evidence around silent sustained reading, and on the other hand, there is pretty good evidence around the value of students being forced to read out loud. And finally, interleaved practice, where students are able to see those skills that they have previously been introduced to and continue to work on them even as they move further into a scope and sequence. So, to that end, what we've done, the AI tutor listens to students read out loud and provides granular feedback at the phoneme-grapheme correspondence level, as well as on articulation. And finally, or excuse me, it provides infinite varied practice of decodable texts. So if we think about repeated practice being something we really want to encourage, the AI tutor can really provide infinite practice. Okay, differentiation based on the individual student. Students can advance through the scope and sequence based on their own pace. Teachers can also adjust the knobs of where they are at in the scope and sequence for any individual student, but we really see a lot of value in students being able to move through that scope and sequence based on their individual needs. As I mentioned, students read out loud into a mic and get real-time feedback. Candidly, like we're at the edges of what's possible there, and every single day we are working on making that better, stronger, more accurate. And then finally, as I mentioned, with interleaved practice, concepts that were previously introduced to a student reappear for reinforcement in decodables that they read. So to summarize, most emerging readers require explicit foundational skills instruction, repeated practice, and I have all three exclamation points there because it's a lot of repeated practice, as I'm sure many of you know. Sufficient opportunities for feedback as well. However, we know this is a lot for teachers to juggle. That was certainly my experience. There's all sorts of logistical reasons and timing related reasons why that's hard to give students sufficient opportunities for. Our AI tutor is intended to support teachers by supercharging the practice opportunities and feedback that their student receives. So I'm going to show you just a quick little video of what I mean by with feedback at the phoneme-grapheme correspondence level. This is a student who is reading a word. You will see that in response, the word is broken down into its Elkonin boxes based on which parts of the word she correctly pronounced and which parts she did not. Then she has an opportunity to self-correct.
Rhythm. Rhythm. Is b on ribbon. Ribbon. Okay, I got all of them right except for this one.
I, b, a,
Ribbon. 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 I, b, in. Ribbon. I got it all right.
So just to kind of recap that, there's a student who tried to read the word ribbon, and initially mispronounced the double B. And she received visual and audio feedback on that missed grapheme phoneme correspondence. She self-corrected on the next attempt. And as you can see, when students put the win on the board themselves, they really do get a lot of joy. So that's just a quick recap of the very basic structure of the sort of feedback students are getting down to the phoneme grapheme correspondence level of granularity. Now, coming soon, we are really excited to release this, but now when students tap on a given Elkonin box, they are not just going to hear the sound like you saw in that video. They're actually going to see a video of the articulatory gesture that's associated with each of those graphemes, those grapheme phoneme correspondences in the context of that word, to really show them how to make that sound. And we know there's really strong evidence on the value of articulatory gestures in phonics instruction. We also have some preliminary pilot data that shows what we're doing is promising. There's all sorts of research I want to do on top of this, but specifically in the high dosage group, it was an average of 15 minutes per week, and we saw fall to winter ORF growth for first through third graders at a school-wide site on Ames Web that really showed pretty strong effect sizes. And as you can see, you can kind of think of effect sizes as a continuum, and anything above zero point 0.4 is considered good typically. And what's also notable to me is we actually saw stronger results for students that are below grade level. So we are working with a professor who's writing up that study now. I look forward to sharing more about it with you soon. But we're also looking forward to studying the impact specifically on phonics inventory data. So how you would think about this and seeing student growths, for example, on core phonics data, for example. So use cases, each of the folks here will talk a little bit more about it. We really do see multiple use cases in how our tutor is being used. It's being used right now by tens of thousands of students each month. And in many cases, that's for tier one instruction. In many cases, it's for intervention, tier two or tier three intervention. And then finally, we also see many older students that are getting this as well to supplement their instruction and hopefully fill in some gaps that they might have in their foundational skills. So with that, I really want to turn things over to each of our panelists. We're going to go one by one, and I'm going to give each of them the floor for a couple minutes to share about who they are after I intro them, and then we'll get back to a little Q&A at the end. Our first panelist is Dawn Vollmer. Dawn is a first grade teacher at Whiteside Elementary in Belleville, Illinois. She has been teaching for 17 years. She has a master's degree in education, and this is her second year using the AI tutor in her classroom. So she's also seen some of the improvements that have come since last year. Dawn, with that, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Our school is located in Southern Illinois, just across the river from St. Louis. Our school percent free and reduced lunch. In my first grade class, I started looking for a way for students to practice reading passages with. I really wanted them to focus on that and being able to differentiate instruction for all to help them feel successful. So how I used it in my room, I used it for morning work, for early finishers. And what I liked about it was I could pick the concept that I wanted each student to use and very quickly. So everyone was working on what they needed. And that's what I liked.
And Dawn, you were a little choppy there. Do you want to just try repeating yourself a little bit? I think your audio is going in and out, so we only caught parts of what you were saying.
I use it. I start for my students to practice reading the concepts we're working on in class. My instructions for the students, so everyone is working on what they need. Center time, early finishers, and it was that they were working on. So I could, if quickly change it. I also created a little challenge. We know over winter break and spring break, the students really pick a book up. So I created a challenge for them over break, the students that could get back. I did like over winter, so like Dairy Queen lunch. Over spring, we hatched little chickens. Of that, I mean, almost everybody got on.
And
I
Dawn,
also
unfortunately, I think your audio is still a little choppy, but if I could try to recap for folks what Dawn has mentioned, because we've spoken before. Dawn mentioned that she has first graders that have used this in centers, in morning work for early finishers. She also really used this to create challenges for students over times they were not in school, so over holiday breaks or spring break, and really used the coins that were coming out of it as a motivational factor for students to stay active when they weren't in class. Dawn, just give me a thumbs up. Is that about right with what you were saying? Perfect. Okay, awesome. The other thing I'm going to do, Dawn, and we'll see if your audio works for this, but I'm just going to share a slide of data you had from your classroom last year, and maybe you can contextualize that a little bit.
so this was my data, and to my class, I had 12 students in tier 3. So those were the intense interventions. By spring, I ended with 1 student. I students coming in the fall, I had 4. And when they left, 15 students. So I feel like Project Read definitely helped reading the, on the AI tutor, the decodables, that all helped tremendously.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Dawn, thank you. And what we had a good suggestion from a panelist, which is it might help with your if you have limited bandwidth to turn off your camera when we do Q&A, so we can get most of it for audio. But yes, just to recap, Dawn had significant growth from fall to spring, and that's obviously because Dawn's an incredible teacher, but also because she really saw the value of students getting repeated practice with the AI tutor and real-time feedback. So I'm hoping Ms. Grace Hayes can also help us out in providing some context to how she has used the AI tutor with her students. And to that end, Grace Hayes is a third through fifth grade reading interventionist at Abbottston Elementary in Baltimore, Maryland. She has also been teaching for over 20 years, and this is her first year using the AI tutor. And Grace, it would be lovely if you kind of gave us a sense of how you learned about the tutor, why you wanted to start using it with your students, and yeah, the whole 9 yards.
Sure. Hello, everyone. I am Grace Hayes, just as Viv has said. I teach in Baltimore, Maryland at Abbottston Elementary School. It's a pre-K to 5 elementary school. 100% of students are free and reduced lunch. I service grades 3 through 5 students who are reading below grade level. And so I have approximately 53 students. And so this was my first year teaching intervention. And so I was charged with using, I don't know if I could say the curriculum that I'm using.
Up to you.
Okay, so I'm using the U-Fly curriculum to teach phonics. And so I love the curriculum, but I wanted the kids to have something to practice at home. So I was looking for more decodables. And so I happened to be online looking for more decodables, and Project Read came up. And so I started using the decodables for students to actually take home to use as homework and practice I noticed that it had aligned with the particular curriculum I was using. And so it allowed students to be able to practice the skills that I had taught during the class. But as I investigated Project Read further, I noticed the AI tutor. And so I was like, oh my gosh, I want this. But I noticed you had to pay for it. And so I filled out the scholarship, the Gary Payton scholarship, was awarded it, and we went straight to work with it. And my students loved it. And I found that I was able to, it gave them immediate feedback with the particular skills that I was teaching. And I enjoyed them having that immediate feedback. And then I could even pull students additionally to work with them while the others were working with the AI tutor. The funny part was when students started using this in their regular homeroom classes, other students started looking and saying, I want to do that, I want to do that. And so I had to actually create a Google Classroom page where other students in grades 3 and 5 could participate. And now it's gotten bigger. And so we have like classroom competitions where students actually compete to see, like, I do a top 10, a project read top 10 for whoever has collected the most coins by the usually like 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks. And then I post it on the door, and they always look to see if they made the top 10. And we have sort of like a breakfast and donut party every morning, or that morning when they are trying to beat each other. And I call them the top 10 superstars. And it's so funny because they will come, even students I don't teach will say, are you going to look to see who's got the top scores this week? And I'll say, no, maybe next week. Or they'll ask, who's got the top score? You know, because they can see each other's names. And so they're trying to beat each other. But what I enjoy seeing is the immediate feedback that I get through the email that will tell me like what particular misconception students, you know, are having, what their difficulties are, and then I can actually go back in and change that objective for the student. So, for example, there are a few that are having third graders who are having trouble with the silent E and the long vowels. So I'm able to actually go in and assign those particular objectives to those students. The other thing, and then I'll be quiet, but the principal had one day gone into another teacher's class, and she saw the kids yelling into the laptops, you know, while they were reading, and she was like, what are they doing? And so it gave me an opportunity to show her, you know, the program, and she's like, this is great. I want it for the, you know, the younger grades. But at any rate, they think it's hilarious when they see the kids yelling into the laptop. And, you know, sometimes they'll get mad and say, you know, because of our dialect being a little different, they will say, I said that, you know, but it's really funny to see the kids engage with it. They love it. I love watching them engage with it. And so we're looking forward to, you know, continuing with it. As far as successes, I have seen we use another program to measure dibbles with, but I want to say at least 90% of them, we have seen them get, if not on grade level, they are making above average growth. And so that's encouraging for us.
Awesome. Thank you, Grace. That's very helpful context. Our final panelist is AJ Stick. And AJ is the founding principal of the Greater Dayton School in Dayton, Ohio, previously taught in Memphis and in Charlotte, and he's been an elementary school principal for 15 years. That includes his time as the founding principal over the last 5 years or so at the Greater Dayton School. It also includes a long stint in Chicago Public Schools and one in Boston as well. So with that, AJ, all you.
All right. So I'll start actually by talking about a mistake I made in Chicago Public Schools. So my teachers and I, we had autonomy to pick a reading curriculum pretty early in my career there. And long story short, we picked the wrong one. And we realized this when we had some problems with our reading scores. And so when I took this job, I had a chance to fix that mistake, and we went back to the drawing board and we really looked at the research. And this was in the last 5 to 6 years when there was plenty of great research in media about the science of reading, and the governor's reading panel report on the benefits of structured phonics programs. And so the second time around, we looked at Wilson Reading, we looked at Foundations, Orton Gillingham, and those were all great programs aligned to the science of reading. But our school, we do a lot of self-paced learning and mastery-based learning. It's almost like a modern-day Montessori program in that sense. And so we really need strong, independent work for students. and we picked a curriculum. I won't say its name for student independent work. And I was, visiting the classes, and it's based on the science of reading. It's a good program, but I was visiting the classes, and the teachers and I were talking, and we're realizing this big problem with this curriculum, which is it's a click-based assessment. And so you can assume when a student is clicking a word, when a student is clicking a letter, when a student is clicking a phoneme, they're typing in the spelling, you can assume they're reading, but you actually never see them reading. And so, I was doing what I do on social media, which is follow innovative educators. And I saw someone post about this product, Project Read AI. And I watched a video, much like the one that Viv showed at the start of this. And it was an immediate light bulb moment for me, where I saw the student reading to this AI tutor, and the AI tutor, so it's capturing real reading through oral reading fluency, and the AI tutor was giving it real-time feedback. And so I immediately reached out to Viv and I said, look, does this project have a scope and sequence? Does it have, a pretty robust student independent work, student pathway? And the answer to that was yes. And so I said, great, let's try it out. And so we did a pilot this last winter. And Viv, if you want to show the data of one of the students in the pilot. So this student was getting Orton Gillingham lessons from the teachers coupled with Project Read's AI Tutor. And they started the year. So this last data point before the 191 score is the 44th percentile. So this student started in pretty solid tier 2 in need of an intervention, got in our intervention program. And in 4 weeks of using the AI tutor, they scored 191, which is the 74th percentile. So they saw a massive achievement jump. They're not only in tier 1 now, but they're almost in what we would call tier 1 plus, which is the top 25th percentile nationally. So we're expanding the pilot. I'm super excited about this product. I want more schools to sign on, which is why I'm here, because I want to see this product continue to develop. It's very exciting.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that, AJ, Grace, Dawn. We do have some time for some Q&A. I have some questions as well as some folks who've asked them live here and would love to jump into a couple of those. So let me get to Q&A. And okay, so Grace, I wanted to ask you, you made mention, and there's another attendee here who asked about student dialect. One of the challenges we have is, we have users from all around the world, and even within the US, between geographies, ethnicities, like there's different patterns of how we speak English, right? There's different dialects. You mentioned that there was some errors listening to from the AI listening to your students speak. Can you talk a little bit more about that and just be totally open about what you see and also how you think about that still versus the value of the real-time feedback and in the moment correction they get, even if it does err from time to time?
Sure. So for example, in Baltimore, most of us say hot dog. But in Baltimore, our dialect is hot dog. And so the students will use their dialogue and they'll say, Doug, Doug, and so as I'm listening, I'm hearing them, Doug, and I will stop. I'll say, hold on 1 second, and that gives me a teachable moment as well to say, well, listen, I know that in Baltimore, our dialect is hot Doug. I said, however, we're looking for that short O sound. What is it? Dog. And so then it will, give them sort of context and say, oh, yeah, hot dog. But I still know and understand that they know the word is dog, but I have to listen for, I don't really hear it until, I sort of see the frustration, like when they're still yelling in, Doug, Doug. So there have been occasions where I would have thought that our dialect, like it wouldn't pick up on it, but the tutor did and was able to understand. I can't remember what the word was before, but there are, some instances where, the students will know, like, no, that I'm saying it, or they think they're saying it correctly based on their context of things. And so then I have to step in, and say, explain, to them, like, that's our dialect. However, you're correct, but just do a little sort of recorrecting and, step in for a bit.
Super helpful.
But it hasn't been a really big issue.
Okay. Well, that's great to hear because it's always something we're working on. Um, so AJ made mention of it, and AJ, I'm going to come back to you in a second. Dawn or Grace, are you able to talk a little bit as well about how this compares to other tools that students have used for practice in your class, digitally speaking? And again, no need to name names, but conceptually, what's happening that's different with what we're doing that stood out to you?
Well, one of the programs that our school is using, I'm trying not to say the name, but the students have been using this same particular program for years. And so it's almost like they've mastered how to cheat with it, so to speak, how to just click here and click there. And they're really not mastering anything. They're just learning how to sort of cheat. And they get frustrated with it. And so they end up, if we're not paying attention, they will end up off task, playing other, computer games, or we'll catch them on YouTube. But in all honesty, when I've seen students with engaging with the AI tutor, I've never had to self-direct any of them to get on task. That's not where you're supposed to be. Like, they are strictly engaged. And I think they like the fact that it gives them quick feedback and they're able to understand the feedback. And then if they get stuck, it helps them correct, or it teaches them, like, well, this is the correct way to pronounce such and such, and I think that makes a big difference.
Awesome. Super helpful.
And
AJ,
ours,
oh, yes, Don, chime in, please.
what we had, it was, you were never reading a passage. It was just, select, one of three choices. So this was great because we now have passages they can read, and that's what they need practice on, that fluency. So that's why I like it.
Awesome. AJ, this one's for you. I'm always wary of how many buzzwords are involved in what we're doing, from science of reading, AI. Like, there's a lot of buzzwords that are proximal to the work we're doing. What makes this feel like it goes beyond the buzzwords for you and actually makes this tangibly useful day to day in Dayton, Ohio?
Yeah, likewise. I'm skeptical of that stuff. And so I try to just cut right through it and go back to really good research. So specifically, two things jump out at me. The first is the governor's reading panel report. That was done, what, 20 years ago, or, it was done a long time ago. It showed the benefit of structured phonics programs. And it kind of settled the score on what good reading to learn or learning to read curriculum should look like. So that's, of course, beyond any hype, right? And then the second is research done by the University of Chicago back in the 80s, showing that the best way for kids to learn is tutorial instruction. It's one-on-one instruction that's individualized for the kid. And so obviously, that's where AI is really interesting. I don't think it'll ever replace the need for a good teacher in the classroom, but certainly, I mean, coming from, well, my current school, I should have mentioned this when I did my intro, but my current school serves nearly 100% kids from low income backgrounds. And that's been my whole career. Certainly in Chicago public schools, that was the case. And in Chicago public, unfortunately, I didn't have near the budget I have now. And so we had to really just dump big caseloads for our interventionists. And where I look past the hype for, products like yours, Viv, is it can really help interventionists, and it can lighten the caseload. It can give those teachers that have very complex work, especially in the public school system, just the support. This tool that provides real-time feedback. It provides, voice activated feedback. It just does things because it's organically uh, built with artificial intelligence. Yeah. So, anyways.
Super helpful. Grace, this one's for you. We have a question here in the Q&A that says, are folks finding that the impact of headphones can make a difference? And I know you just made a change and would love for you to talk a little bit about that.
Yes, actually, we did just get some, or were gifted some headphones with the microphones in them. Um, it's been a blessing, kind of twofold. For one, when you have a classroom of kids who are just have the regular headphones and they're yelling into their laptops, it gets pretty loud in the classroom. But I noticed that the noise level has kind of diminished when they have the microphone piece to it, um, because they don't have to yell as loudly into the computer. It's able to pick up what they're saying. Also, I would have to space them out all over the classroom so that it wouldn't pick up another student using the program as well. But I noticed that, as a matter of fact, this week, when they had the headphones with the attached microphone, I could have like two students at a table, and it was not picking up the feedback where it was doing that a lot before.
Awesome. Yeah, I would just echo that and say that we see much better results when kids both A have headphones but also have the headphones with the mic on them. There's far less cross-pollination of noise in a classroom environment, which we know are noisy places as is. So certainly would recommend that. And I know that sometimes that's outside of your control as an educator. So at minimum, if you are using it, I would say at least try to space kids out. Um, I'm gonna wrap us up with one last question, and then I'll provide a little bit more information at the end here as well. So here's my question for y'all. We are still early in our journey. AJ, for example, has been candid with me that he would love to have more granular data as a principal. That's something that we're working on. I'm sure, many magic wands folks could wave and features they'd want to add. And yet, you three have been here. You've gotten to know me a little bit. You constantly provide feedback, good, bad, ugly, otherwise. Despite us being so early, like, what made you want to be involved in this? And that's for any or all of you.
Um, I really wanted to be involved in it because, um, initially I was looking for help. But then when I saw the enjoyment of the kids, and I noticed that it was such a phenomenal supplement to what I was doing. Um, like I no longer call it a supplement anymore. It's like in addition to, what I'm doing. Because now I've added like Project Read Thursdays where, I'm actually watching them on Go Guardian, and I'm taking notes, as I'm listening to what they're doing and the mistakes or not mistakes that they're making. It's just been interest well, it's been a godsend for me, to be honest with you. If I may, I would, so I've noticed that they're reading the stories, and it would say like story complete. Um, I would love, like I saw the comprehension builder that's there. Um, but I would love it if that it somehow, soon or later could be added, as part of, now you've read this story. Let's see what you know or what you comprehended from this story.
Awesome. AJ, Dawn, anything about what made you want to be involved despite the rough edges?
I just loved having the students be able to work on the concepts we're working on and being able to read the passages because they need the practice. A lot of times, they don't get that practice, or we may have one decodable, that goes with that concept, and having multiple, different options for them to read was just a great thing. And parents like it because they can practice at home and they don't need their help. And it's just a way to get better for them.
Yeah, for me, we bet on people. So we hire great teachers. We do a lot of vetting of our vendors before we work with the vendor, and we get references for vendors and people before we sign on to have them work with us. And so for us, I think it's a lot about you, Viv. I think I know you. I know you care about the mission, and that is your North Star. I mean, you said that to open this webinar, and that's true. And I've gotten to know you. I've gotten to know how dedicated you are to this product, and you're not in it for the money. You're trying to bring this product to market at a very fair price so that all kids can access it and public schools can afford it, not just schools like us. And so, you know, that's part of it. And then, of course, I already talked about the research. So those two things are why we're here.
I really appreciate that, AJ, and those words mean a lot to me, and I think you very perceptively put your finger on the pulse of why we're doing this.
And if I might add to, um, I just, being that I'm teaching fifth graders, who are, working behind the eight ball, getting ready to go to middle school, for once, they've actually felt successful. Like they come into my classroom and feel like I can do this. They walk in feeling like they can and they leave, feeling successful. And so for me, that makes my heart glad.
Thank you for sharing that, Grace. And with that, I'll wrap up with just a couple last announcements. So, as I mentioned, we've kept this thing as free as long as we can, and it remains free through the remainder of this year. Speech recognition is really expensive, and we are trying to put together affordable plans. They start at $2,500 per school and are based on the number of students. I think you will find that they remain way more accessible than most programs you might think about. I also want to mention a couple forthcoming improvements. So I mentioned that the articulatory gestures will be coming soon. I'm really excited about that. I'm also excited to share that we will be able to align our scope and sequence options, not just so it's the Project Read scope and sequence, but also the UFly scope and sequence. So be on the lookout for that. We're excited to add that as an option to the scope and sequences as well. At the end of at the end of the webinar, you will get a survey, and it will provide a link to an interest form if you're interested in learning more about the tutor for next year or want to connect us with admin, because ultimately we know we really don't want teachers paying for anything we do out of pocket whenever avoidable. So please reach out to me with any other questions we did not answer here. I see a bunch of Q&As that we didn't quite get to. I'm sorry about that, but you can reach us at either support projectread.ai or personally reach me at viv at projectread.ai. But again, thank you for attending. We will send out a recording of the webinar as well for those folks who were not here, as well as for those who were here. And I just genuinely appreciate the time of all of our panelists and all of those who joined us today on this call. So thanks again, and we hope to be in touch. Take care.